This is, of course, one of the reasons why GRE, they have started making GRE and many other things. So point number 1 was generally accepted by all education institutions. Point number 2 was not accepted by all institutions. But we'll still see, even if point number 2 is a problem, but it is still not a bad problem, and we have solutions for this. Now, let us first discuss problems of GRE, what it does not do. GPA is far more important than GRE. Some people believe that GPA is far more important as an application component than GRE. And GRE scores are not true reflections and not at all related to a student's eventual graduate. So what you get in GRE, it does not truly reflect what you have got in GPA. So if you probably have got a very high GPA, 8 or 9 or something like that, but your GRE score is low, or the vice versa. So there is no balance, apparent. So GRE is not a true reflection. GRE can also not test the factors like creativity, persistence, emotional, ability to overcome obstacles, interpersonal skills. These are not directly measured by anyone. That was also a point out by many people. And it restricts diversity. Let us give counter examples of this. Now, apart from this, in addition to this, 2 or 3 research papers were published in 2017, which actually have shown, and one of them came from Vanderbilt University, and another came from University of North Carolina, not exactly sure, other campus. These 2 universities, which are very well-known universities in 2017, published 2 papers, which actually showed that at doctoral level, research productivity and GRE score are not at all related. In the sense that if I am getting a good GRE score, does not mean that I will be able to do research well. So since there is less correlation or very low correlation between my research productivity and my high GRE score, few universities have started taking GRE as an optional specifically at the doctoral level. And Vanderbilt University made a very wide research, kind of a survey in order to understand whether it's true or not. What they have found out is very interesting. They have found out that GRE quantitative score and continuous measure of progress in the program and the research productivity revealed no effect. That is one of the outcomes of that research. GRE quantitative score did not significantly correlate with time to defend their thesis. That is also one of their concerns. GRE scores showed some validity in predicting classroom performance, but not progress in the program or research. But the reason why I'm spending a great deal of time on this, because you need to understand why GRE was made optional in the first place. These 3 are the main outcomes of that. This, along with the suspicion that GRE and GPA are not correlated and GRE restrict diversity, have driven some universities to believe that GRE can be made optional. Unfortunately, there is no universally accepted way to gauge utility or value of a GRE. So let us find out how to then counter this. We will discuss about points of concern raised by various researchers. And the data that I'm going to show you now in coming 10 minutes are actually taken from various sources and reliable sources, of course. Let us first discuss the GPA problem. We have already discussed one of the GPA problems, how GRE is minimizing the GPA problem. Each and every institution, each and every country has their own grading system. So just to normalize, just to bring them on a single level or single reference point, GRE was introduced. So the subjectivity created by different grading system from different educational institutions were actually minimized by GRE, and that was one of the successes of GRE. It also empowers value of GPA. It does not only minimizes the differences created by GPA, but it also empowers GPA. because it is found that the combined predictive power of GRE score and an average GPA is increased using them together rather than using them separately. Predictive power means to predict whether the student will be successful. So to predict whether the student will be successful, if you use only GRE or only GPA, that predictive power will be more if you use GRE and GPA both together to predict the same success indicator. So that is the second the success of GRE, why then GRE was important and why then GRE is still important. No, this is very interesting. I have got it from another very reliable sources. That correlation between GRE verbal score and cumulative graduate GPA. Cumulative graduate GPA means the GPA that you will get at the end of your graduate. So that GPA and your GRE verbal score are related. They are not uncorrelated. Few people believe that uncorrelated. Now they are related. They have found out, some people have found out they're related. And the relation is given by quantitatively 0.2. If some people believe that 0.22 is a very small number, this number is still better and bigger than the relation between smoking and lung cancer. This relation, this correlation is still bigger and better than relation between hypertension and reduced risk of stroke. And this is still better than bypass surgery for heart disease and survival for at least 5. So this relation between GPA and GRE is not, the correlation is not small. It is so big that it is even bigger than most of the usual and normal and well-known correlations that we know worldwide. Even the correlation between analytical writing score and cumulative GPA for some biological and biomedical science doctoral program is more than alcohol use and aggressive. This is a very interesting data that actually shows that few correlation that we already know, we know it from various sources. Even a particular part of a GRE and GPA, the correlation between these two are better or bigger correlation. Give you a bigger correlation than most of the correlations, other type of correlations that we know. For example, correlation between quantitative reasoning score, GRE quantitative and cumulative graduate GPA once again in MBA program is more than sleeping pills and short-term improvement in chronic insomnia and psychotherapy and subsequent well-being. So those who want to support GRE and want to kind of go ahead with GRE, they have some stronger reasons to tell other people that yes, GRE is more important. Now, how these are important for a student point of view, we'll talk about that at the end of the discussion. So now we'll come to the next point. GRE cannot measure creativity, cannot measure persistence, cannot measure emotional quotient, cannot measure interpersonal skill, and so on. Some people believe that. But we need to also understand that GRE was never introduced to test the skills. It was not the purpose of a GRE. It was actually, it is supposed to be measured by other parts of your application process. GRE was introduced to make the holistic application process complete. So GRE has to be considered in conjunction with other parts of your application process, so that each and every component, if taken together, should give you a complete holistic thing. For example, interpersonal skills, EQ, ability to overcome obstacles can be addressed in personal statement, in statement of purpose, in letter of recommendations. You do not need a GRE score to do that. Some people also say that GRE is believed to restrict diversity. I mean, if you put a restriction like GRE, those who cannot write GRE cannot come to the campus. So there is a restriction that you put in to, I mean, that you are actually restricting the diversity, and now universities are actually promoting diversity. But University of Georgia, they have researched that keeping test optional does not make university more diverse. In fact, it is the other way around. Student only high scores report there. So that once again, in other way, restricts that. And finally, they are not biased in another. So now I think I have been able till now to give you an overview why the usual conceptions or say misconceptions about GRE or objections about GRE are not actually an objection. GRE is playing far more important role and more useful than ever before. Now, we have almost come to end and I need just 5 minutes. Now we will address one of the most important issues that we have discussed 5 minutes back. From few universities told that research productivity and other things are the success indicators of a student. For example, if I'm a graduate student, if I'm going to a graduate school, how can I define my success? What are the success indicators? Whether my GRE scores are related to that success indicators. These are very important things to understand. Some people have formulated that there are 7 or 8 success indicators that actually define success of a graduate. For example, faculty rating is one of them. Research citation is one of them. Research productivity is one of them. Comprehensive examination score is one of them. Degree attainment is one of them. And GPA is one of them. Let me take 2 minutes to tell you why are these important and how are they related. Some people believe that GRE cannot measure success. Then some people came and researched, they said, if you define success in terms of these indicators, then GRE can measure. And there is a correlation. And these indicators are, first, citation count. How many times your research has been cited by others. There is a moderate to positive correlation between GRE and citation. And some people have found out section-wise how they are related to citation. Even research productivity is also related to GRE, but little lower than other success indicators. Degree attainment, this is a very important thing. Master's degree in US is a 2-year course, mostly. PhD in US is a 4 to 5 year course. Degree attainment is a term which signifies whether you are able to get that degree successfully after that particular period of time, how much time you take, or whether you are successful at all or not, whether even after 2 years for masters or even after 5 years for master, whether you are able to finish your program. So that particular indicator, which actually indicates your success, can also be measured by GRE, verbal, quantitative, and this thing. Now, when I say measured, I actually mean that there is a correlation. If one is high, another is low. If there is a negative correlation, and positive means both are going in the same direction. Comprehensive examination score means the examinations that you write after you get an admission to that program, not the GRE and other things. The score that you get after you get an admission to that program is also related to the score that you got in GRE. So there is a correlation. So the score that you get in your first semester exam, second semester exam in master's program are also somewhat related to this. So that is how people have shown that this, yes, there is a correlation. Yes, you can say something about the success in terms of GPA or in terms of what is your score in the subsequent examination in your program if you look at your GRE score. Faculty rating means how faculty rates you. That is also related to what you have got in GRE. So if you have GRE very high, and in the long run you see that faculty is not happy with you, at least research wise or academic wise, then there is a problem. So there is also a moderate to positive correlation. The only negative correlation that people have seen is with GRE and the time to complete a degree at doctoral level. So apart from this, all were positive. So all were good and better news for GRE, that it has got a positive correlations of all the success indicators that have been defined for graduate success. Now, this table shows you, as you can see, if you're coming from a science and technology background, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, sixth column gives you a correlation between GRE and subjects. correlation means like kind of a success correlations. And kind of semi-finally, I would like to tell you that we need to understand why GRE was introduced and why GRE is still doing what it is supposed to. The answer is yes. It was introduced as a component, which is not an independent component, which, if considered, will allow or will help the admission committee to understand the student's skill in a holistic manner. It was never introduced as one independent component that we use only GRE and you find okay, I mean that is be successful in the graduate. And second, it was also used for the holistic approach, the holistic admission. So we need to understand why GRE is introduced, whether it is still doing its job. The answer is yes. Whether it is positively correlated to all the success indicators. The answer is yes. And whether it is still a good component for your and for your graduate success level, the answer is also of course yes. Finally, we have come to almost the second or third last of the whole discussion. Apart from the selection process, University Admission Committee also uses GRE to understand whether you are eligible for a fund. Fund in terms of a teaching assistantship, research assistantship, graduate assistantship, or even a fellowship. I mean, of course, fellowship different from this kind of regular assistantship programs. So many universities sometimes write it on their website that if you want a fellowship, then of course if you're also looking at a fellowship, then of course GRE is important. And specifically for PhD programs, sometimes they make it mandatory that yes, you must have a GRE to get a full funding. You must maintain this respect the deadlines and so on. So GRE becomes one of the important criteria to get all those funds and all. If apart from that, usual purpose of GRE. And finally, if you are looking at BE schools, then yes, MBA aspirants can also write GRE because now many MBA programs have started taking GRE and GMAT interchangeably, and they are quite, GRE has become quite useful even for some MBA programs. Now these are kind of list of many students who have got good scoring GRE or a very strong scoring GRE, and they are positive response from prestigious universities, like for example some Ivy Leagues. For example, if you're coming from specifically coming from a background like computer science or engineering, university like Carnegie Mellon, UT Austin, for example, Ivy like Brown, for example, or University of California, Irvine, for example, or San Diego, for example. All these very well-known universities, specifically for computer science, they need GRE, very high scores of GRE. So in a nutshell, the crux is GRE is still doing what it is supposed to do and doing it quite successfully. There are some objections, very serious objections. Of course, everybody has admitted that there are serious objections. But still, even if you consider those objections are real, there are reasons, as we have discussed, stronger reasons to believe that GRE is still useful and capable of putting a very useful component or useful side or skill of a student that is useful for or important for the overall holistic evaluation process of mainly USA universities. So as an advisor, my personal and professional advice will always be write GRE. That gives you a confidence. It makes you eligible for 100% universities in the world. And also, if the score is high, then Like, for example, I was just going through a University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, and Texas A&M engineering websites. They have specifically mentioned that, okay, we do not want it, but if you have it, please send. We will really take it very seriously. So that is my point. So if you have it, send it. They will take it seriously. That's my point. So if you have made up, if you have this thing in your mind, okay, even if the GRE optional, whether should I write it or not, the answer is yes. It makes you eligible for all universities, all kinds of universities, for all good reasons. There is no negativity, you will put in your system if you have a good GRE. So yeah, please go ahead. Ram, I'm sorry, I think I have taken too much of time. Now, please go ahead and.
All right, Nilanjan. Thank you. Thanks a lot. That was a wonderful session. A lot of insights into it. Good evening, everyone. This is Ram Kumar, heading the academics for Manya, the Princeton Review. Okay, let me just share my screen. Nilanjan, I'm taking over. I'm sure my screen is visible.
Yes, Ram.
Okay, so we're going to see what are the key strategies for scoring a 320 plus in GRE. Well, how difficult, is it to score a 320 plus? Just a second. My slide is not there. Oh, okay. So how difficult is it to score a 320 plus on the GRE? You all know that, 320 plus will definitely impact your admission process, isn't it? Now, I'm sure your prep plan is underway. You must have practiced a few tests and started memorizing words. Well, has it given you a 320 already? Even before we see what are the key strategies, I think we should probably look at the common myths in GRE preparation. Now, GRE math is complex. Okay. GRE math is complex. Really? Have you not been studying arithmetic, algebra, and geometry for the past 15 years? Well, yes. I'm sure everybody would say yes. Now, increasing my quant score is easier for most of us. But verbal is not our cup of tea. So what? Should we have a way to deal with it, right? Now, I've seen people practicing, keep on practicing. Well, I think, is that the way that everyone should be doing it? No, that's not it, because you have to review the test, then And many people have sort of an assumption that, sorry, yeah. So many people have the assumptions that, that all standardized tests are the same. Not really. Different tests need different approaches. So what you have to do is learn the nuances. Well, is there a change in your game plan after, going through the myths? Well, even before you think of changing your game plan, probably you have to look at the topic-wise distribution in the GRE test. If you see this graph, you will see almost one of the one section deals with data analysis and the remaining two-thirds for other topics, right? Also, if you look at the verbal reasoning, if you see the graph, half of it for the reading comprehension, the other half is for the vocabulary. All right, just have a look at it carefully. There's a study which reveals that an average test taker score 142 yeah. So an average test taker score 142 points in the verbal section without any preparation. Whereas focused practice using strategies, if you see, it takes them to 157. So that's 15 points improvement in just the verbal reasoning. That's amazing, isn't it? Let's see the story for math. So if you look at it in a similar way, you will see the average test taker score without preparation stands at 149, whereas a focused preparation with strategies actually gets him nearly 20 points improvement. All right. Probably now it's the time to set your target for verbal and quantitative score. I'm sure if we consider a STEM student, he would definitely want to hit a perfect score. So this perfect score from the ETS, only 4% of the test takers are able to make it. So if someone is able to score a perfect score in quant, then he should be targeting a 150 plus in order to achieve the 320. Or not everyone would be able to get the perfect score. As you know, just the top 4% of the students are able to do it. So maybe you should think of having a 165 plus in a quant and maybe a 155 plus in verbal. Okay. Well, so the story is completely different for non-STEM students. So non-STEM students probably should go for a 165 plus or a 90th percentile in verbal and somewhat like a 155 plus in quant. I'm sure this is clear. All right. Okay. Having set your target for quant and verbal, Let's look at the focus areas for verbal. Start with the vocabulary. Is GRE test all about words? Not just words. Can you become a walking dictionary? Would you be able to memorize 3,000 to 5,000 words? And are all the words tested on the GRE? No. So what you have to do is, one thing that we have to be, thanking ETS is, ETS keeps repeating the words in GRE. They repeat, they recycle, stuff like that. So what we have to do is, we got to focus on the important words, or we call them high frequency words. Okay, now, be it simple, be it a simple word or a complex word, understanding the context is the key in GRE. All right. Also, you need to get a hold on the language and not just the words. That's more important in GRE. All right. Having said that, next in our line is our best friend, reading comprehension. Should we read every word in the passage? I don't think so. Well, I may be a science student, but I may have to answer a history passage. Can't help it. It's a GRE. So I'm sure some of us have the tendency that, if you see familiar words and answer choices that you came across in the passages, you may think that's the right pick, but unfortunately, those are the minds. I'm sorry, something is happening. All right. So getting back to the vocabulary, words that sound nice, it's like, the love at first sight. So be really sorry. Yeah, I should write less. Okay. Now, correlating two sentences is easy. Well, when two sentences are married to each other, it's much more complex. All right. Um, well, if you get one blank right in a multiple blank question, there's no way you get the partial credits. All right. Let's look at the focus area on quant. Don't run for solution with preconceived notions. Again, when you come across polygamous questions, please break them into pieces. Work them in bite-sized pieces. Quantitative comparison question. Now, GRE tests almost 40% of the questions in the quantitative format, quantitative comparison format. So you have to work very carefully. Okay, next is the data analysis. Well, data analysis is nothing but math RC. Only thing what you have to do is when there's a chart, the graph is given, read the information carefully. No need to, go through everything, and then no need to look for exact solution. Sometimes you may have to use estimation because the data points may be in thousands and sometimes in millions. All right. Okay. Next topic for discussion is geometry. Some students really get scared when come across the overlapping shapes. Just stick to the basics. Okay. It's so simple. It's just that they wanted to make it complicated. Stick to the basics. Some students, even after taking the GRE, they would come and say that there was incomplete information in a geometry question. That's not true. You have to see, are you missing something? And there are situations whereby you must have learned geometry in schools, and there might be a situation where you may have to use an unpopular formula, which is part of geometry. But then again, there are ways to actually deal with those questions. See if we can sort of get a rough estimate of an answer. That should actually help us. All right. Now, we have understood the traps on the verbal and the quant. The right techniques and strategies take you to 320. Okay, will this do? What more you think you need? Well, you have to ask yourself, are you an effective test taker? If you're an effective test taker, then you have to practice problems using the strategies. Then you become the effective test taker. Well, what are the effective test taking skills? Well, number one, are you practicing in the right way, the right material? Are you using the scratch paper? Are you aware of the time you spent on every question? And are you getting distracted when you're taking the practice tests or drills? Let's just get deeper into each topic. So we all have the tendency to practice what we are strong at. Generally, students from engineering background prefer to practice lots and lots of math problems, and they keep verbal aside. No, that's not the right way. Please focus on both. It's very important that you practice verbal as well. And then when it comes to selecting material, you may see there are a lot of materials that are available online, but are they all authentic? No. So select the right material and make a study plan and practice. There's also some group of students, they prefer that they are so good at a few topics, but they are not so good at a couple of topics. So they would just get obsessed, and then they start working on those harder topics which seldom appear in GRE. So it's very important that you understand the syllabus for the GRE. All right. Okay. Um, there's another reason that we have to be eternally grateful to ETS. That's they provide scratch paper. GRE is a mind game. Test makers play with your mind. So keep yourself away from the mind game. Only way to do that is you got to organize your scratch paper efficiently. On the test day, there'll be a lot of pressure. So organizing scratch paper would actually help you to move back and forth, because within a section you're allowed to do that. So organizing scratch paper is important. Now, I would say a large group of students again have a very bad habit, that is not using scratch paper for verbal reasoning. It is suicidal. Please beware. Okay, so um, everybody would love to have all the time in the world to do the tests, but unfortunately GRE is a time test. So pacing is very, very important, and ETS is not going to really reward you for doing the problems in the numerical order. So don't bother about the order. Please do the easy, the medium, whatever you feel you're strong at, and then keep the harder ones towards the end. All right. um, another thing is, people also sort of work on a little bit of math, and then they assume that I have to spend 1 minute and 45 seconds in quant, and I have to spend 1 minute and 30 seconds on a verbal question. But this is just an average, time to be spent on each question. But that's not true. If you come across a single blank question, probably you can answer them in less than 30 seconds. Maybe if you come across a 3 blank question, a longer reading comprehension passages, then you need more time. Okay, so it is important that you pace. So this all comes with a lot of practice. So techniques or the strategies actually do two important things. One is, they take care of the accuracy and time management. And the second one, using strategies, you can make a harder problem pretty easier. All right. Well, on the actual test, you're not allowed to carry your phone. So why are you using it during the practice sessions at home? Now, again, in the actual test, I mean, you can't really, take unscheduled breaks, because you're going to lose time. I mean, they may not say no for any emergency, but you'll be losing time. So please practice tests with scheduled breaks. And many of us have this habit of finding the meanings of words, or maybe some formula for um, volume of pyramid or so from Google. No, in the actual test, you're not allowed to use any other browser apart from the GRE test ETS browser. All right. So you have to get used to the actual testing environment. All right. Now that we have understood the key strategies for scoring a 320 plus in GRE, we should start using them in our practice and then the test taking. All right. Well, that's the end from my side. So it's time for Q&A. So over to the panelists. Do we have any questions? I'm sorry, I may have missed some of the questions earlier.
There are some questions which we can see on the chat box. Here I have answered your question. Sarjarao, you have asked how much weightage given by universities in USA for GRE, GPA, LOR, CV, etc. Sanjana, there is no specific, weightage distribution in that sense, but everything is important. And then, as we have discussed, that since it is a holistic admission process, your GRE, GPA, LOR, and CV, everything makes sense, and everything has a different role to play. That is what is important. You need to understand that every component has its own role to play. And for example, you now know what GRE is doing. Your GPA actually tells you that whether you have received a sufficient academic background or whether you have got sufficient prerequisites. Because, for example, if you're coming from a course ABC and applying to course XYZ, then US universities will be okay with that. But the problem is they would like to understand whether you already have sufficient prerequisites for the new program. And in that case, probably your GPAs will help, or in some cases, some additional coursework will also help. LORs are kind of a third-party validation for your strengths and weaknesses. And CV is, of course, a snapshot of whatever you have done. So everything is different. Weightage-wise, it's very difficult to tell exactly what kind of percentage that university will have to each component, but everything is important.
Yeah, so Nilanjan, thank you for that. I'll just jump in with one more perspective. So while it's difficult to talk about weightage, because that is a very university-specific decision which the admissions committee or the graduate school takes, or even the department takes at times. What is of use to students is to establish the kind of GPA score and the GRE they have, to sort of establish how far that can take them towards a particular group of universities. If they meet the minimum threshold level for a particular group of university or a particular university, then that's a good way to identify where they should apply. Yeah, so that's it. Let's move on to the next question.
Others, you have asked which exam is best to study masters in US or Canada or Germany out of IELTS and TOEFL. Some people will, of course, I mean, this actually needs a lot of discussions once again. If you look at IELTS and TOEFL from different perspectives, now IELTS is little easier than TOEFL, at least structure-wise. And if you consider the acceptance, then Germany accepts, of course, IELTS, US, Canada, all of them will accept IELTS. So finally, as far as my recommendation is considered, it actually, it depends on the student and many other things. For example, whether you find IELTS is easier, or whether your university actually accepts TOEFL or IELTS or so on. So it is, I mean, it is very difficult to tell whether it is IELTS or TOEFL. It actually depends on you. But if you are writing IELTS but not writing TOEFL, you're not going to lose anything.
Right. So just to add on to that, where you want to study is also a factor, whether you should take TOEFL or IELTS, because TOEFL is an American exam and it works for the US best. Now, apart from admissions in the US, where IELTS is also accepted at 99% of the universities, IELTS is actually a visa requirement for UK. It is a more easy to use visa requirement for Canada and Australia also, though by writing an additional letter or by including something in the visa statement of purpose, you could potentially use a TOEFL as a visa requirement also for Canada and Australia. But if you're clear that you're applying to a particular country where IELTS is the preferred visa requirement, then it is better to take the IELTS. If you are applying to a lot of countries where maybe US is one of them, then again, it's probably better to take IELTS. And if you are applying, if you are applying to the US as a prime destination, then of course TOEFL is the better exam. But then, as Nilanjan rightly said, you need to keep in mind that IELTS is slightly easier in terms of structure and predictability.
We have asked, do universities in US accept 15 years of education for masters in IT domain? In general, US universities do accept 15 years of education, but not all. That is the problem. So to be sure whether the university that you are targeting is accepting 15 years of education or not, a better way to understand this fact is, you write a letter to the graduate admission advisor or graduate program coordinator of that particular department to get the clarification of this particular point. Because each and every university has their own, different policy on 15 years of education. Either it is a graduate admission advisor or graduate program coordinator of that particular department.
Okay, there's a question from Harshit. Does analytical writing section adds any value to the GRE final score? No. AWA is independent of the GRE final score. So AWA is scored in the scale of 0 to 6. We all know that.
Yes, 4 out of 6 will be a very good scoring.
Yes.
So career opportunities after masters in management, Nilanjan, would you like to take that up first? Maybe I can add on later.
Career opportunities after masters in management, USA, and which country is better to choose? Okay, Manoj, it depends on exactly what kind of management you are looking at, because whenever we go to a masters in management kind of program, ultimately you will develop some kind of interest for some special subject. Okay, and you probably will be doing some kind of a internship or a short-term project or maybe a short-term work over there to get more specific skills or some more specific domain in the entire management curriculum. So it depends on exactly what is your career goal and what kind of special topics you will be interested in the course of your program. But as far as the USA management scenario is considered, the situation is still good. I mean, we have come out of the COVID, at least as far as the education is considered. We are coming out. Things were a little bad in 2018 or 19. Even from a very good institutions, USA could not get the job that they wanted. Some of my, in fact, some of my closed who are very close to me, who went to US at that particular point of time, did not unfortunately get the thing that they wanted because of the COVID things. But right now it depends on exactly what kind of domain you are choosing. For example, marketing, supply chain, information management, course like, say, for example, engineering management, specifically if you're coming from an engineering background, and finance are really doing good nowadays. Yeah, Vikram.
Yeah, so that covers the career perspective. And one thing to keep in mind is that Indian students are always successful in STEM careers, and that is a huge focus of employment for internationals when it comes to any job market, not just the US, but even Western Europe and UK. And the reason I'm pointing out Western Europe and UK, apart from Australia and Singapore, is that these destinations offer the masters in management. I mean, a greater number of universities in these non-US destinations, non-Canadian, non-North American destinations offer masters in management. Masters in management is still relatively hard to find as a program in the US and in Canada, though selectively there are universities such as Michigan and Duke amongst the top options in the US, and the University of York Schulich Business School in Canada. These are some of the top options, but there isn't as much or as many options available as there is in Europe and Western Europe and UK and Australia in particular. Even Singapore has a few universities offering it. So keeping in mind the specialization that you want to take up, the curriculum that you want to pursue, not just the career that you're looking for afterwards. The other two factors may also depend on where you ultimately want to study masters in management. And just to clarify for the other audience members here, in case you're not aware what the Masters of Management is, essentially it is an MBA for students with less than 3 years of corporate experience, as defined by most European and British business schools, at least. Yeah, so we'll move on to the next question, please.
Sajjada, we have asked non-GRE or TOEFL question. If possible, please answer, or you can skip it. Okay, for fall 2023 admission at USA, tentatively by when parents need to ensure first-year funds are in account? As early as possible. But if you're applying in the month of, say, for example, in the month of December, you are supposed to get an admit or a positive reply from them within 4 to 6 weeks, or even like, say, for example, 6 to 8 weeks. So even if you get a positive response in the month of Feb, say Feb end or March mid or something like that, then after you get an admit from a university, the usual process is you say either yes or no to that particular offer and show to the university you have first year funds with you. So probably Feb end, before Feb end, if you can manage your first year funds, that will be fantastic.
Well, there's a question from Dheeraj. How many attempts can a student take? Ideally one, but not more than two, because ATS has done a study whereby, they have not seen students improve in their scores when they go beyond 2 attempts. The graph is sort of, the curve is flat after 2 attempts. So maximum 2 is good.
This question here, I'm looking forward to a STEM MBA. I have 14 years of work ex in IT project management. Was this answered, or should I take it up? All right, I'll just add my perspective here. Essentially, with 14 years of experience, you're not really looking at the mainstream 2-year North American MBA program. You're looking at either full-time executive MBA options, which a few business schools in the US offer and a few IIMs in India offer. That's your best bet. So look at unconventional MBA programs such as ISP has a PGP Pro and a PGP Max. So you'll have to look at which of those suit you best. I believe PGP Pro might suit you best because they have a GMAT waiver and you have IT project management experience. So even though you might be on the higher end of the class in terms of age, there would be a lot of business perspectives coming in from different industries. So have a look at ISP's website, talk to their admissions office or talk to us here at Mania to help you figure out whether you are looking at the PGP Pro or PGP Max. Apart from that, the top 6 IIMs in India, IIM Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Calcutta, Kozhikode, Indore, and Lucknow, which operates their campus from Noida, they do offer a 1-year full-time executive MBA, which they call by different names. These are essentially programs which you need to contact and sort of negotiate a GMAT waiver. Apart from that, when it comes to the US, there is the Global Executive MBA at the University of Washington's Foster Business School. There is the IBEAR MBA at the University of Southern California's Marshall Business School. There is the 1-year MBA at Cornell University. So you'll have to sort of negotiate a GMAT waiver with each of these institutions. And apart from getting a go ahead from the admissions committee, you can also potentially take up the optional essay in each of these applications to sort of explain that you come from an IT project management background, you have a lot of analytical skills already, you've been working with numbers throughout your career, and therefore, even though you have asked for and possibly received a GMAT waiver, you have enough quantitative skills, numerical ability to succeed in an MBA program without the GMAT. Yeah, so yeah, over to you, Nilanjan or Ram, for the next question.
Yeah, Priya, you have written, good evening. I have a query that is it mandatory to write GRE exam to get into top universities for masters in USA? And I already wrote TOEFL exam 90 and my CGPA is 8.7. So Priya, you see, if your CGPA is 8.7 and if you've already completed your undergraduate, then of course you cannot change it. But the thing is, TOEFL is also a good score, like 90 is a good score. But there are a few universities, although very less in numbers, I mean, they expect 100 plus score. So if you are able to write TOEFL once again, you can go for it. Now, whether you will write GRE exam or not, of course, that depends on many things. We have discussed about this particular thing for almost an hour, but it depends on exactly which university, what kind of university you are targeting and what kind of program you are targeting. And I mean, what way the university is looking at GRE, whether the GRE is kept optional or recommended or strongly recommended or not required. So you need to understand these expectations from the university. Then you need to decide. So a generic answer is very difficult. I mean, you need to decide, you need to just pick up one university and try to find out whether exactly what kind of expectation the university has got as far as GRE is considered. But if you are considering a few specific universities, then TOEFL, I mean, as far as TOEFL is considered, they need 100 plus. CGPA 8.7 is quite decent. It's fine. And Priya, one last thing. Now, universities sometimes will also give you a distribution of section-wise marks that they expect from a student, even if it is IELTS or TOEFL. And what we have seen that 22 is the minimum score that a normal university expects. And around 27 in speaking is expected by many good universities. So if you have touched those numbers, it is fine.
So Manoj here has a question that he's actually interested in the masters in marketing and not perhaps the masters in management. So Manoj, I think again it goes back to the kind of work you want to do, because marketing is all about either marketing analytics, digital marketing, or the creative side, branding side of marketing. So you need to think about what you want to do and accordingly decide the destination. In terms of program availability, you will find uh, a larger number of universities in Western Europe and UK offering the masters in marketing or the masters in management with a specialization in marketing. And if curriculum is of prime interest, or you want to gain a specialization within marketing, such as branding or digital marketing or marketing analytics or whatever, then you might look at Europe for the sheer availability of options. Otherwise, there are a few masters in marketing programs in North America as well. There's a question here on how long do you need to maintain funds in the account for the visa application. So typically for a US visa application, you would need to show your 6 months bank statement apart from your last 3 years IT returns. So you need to ideally maintain the funds for 6 months so that no awkward questions are asked during the visa interview. And then the follow-up question is whether these funds need to be in fixed deposits or savings accounts. So savings accounts is fine, fixed deposits is also fine, but in the case of fixed deposits, the face value of the fixed deposit, the initial value needs to be taken, not the maturity value. So if you have fixed deposits, that's okay. The value that you invested initially into it, that is what you would put on your visa application.
Yeah, just to add another point here, savings bank account is considered to be a liquid account. So when you are the student, you are at a stage to show your first year fund to the university. The university specifically asks that you show only a liquid account for the first year fund. So savings bank, education loan, current bank account, they are like liquid accounts. After you get your I-20 from the university showing the first year fund through a liquid account, then you have the flexibility to show other semi-liquid or fixed accounts as well for the second year. So sometimes the university gives you this kind of restrictions that for first year only the liquid accounts, or they'll give you a list of acceptable sources of funds only for first year. Saving is one of them. So as Vikram has rightly pointed out, you need to now then find out whether the fixed deposit has that quality or not.
Any further questions? Nilanjan, you can take over.
Yeah.
Ram, any questions here which you would like to address?
No, Vikram, I don't see any questions to be addressed.
Nilanjan, any questions you can identify? which we can take up from an admissions perspective?
As of nothing as of now. Scrolling up and down.
Nilanjan, there's a question on the chat window.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at it. If you have found a question which is not answered, can you just let me know where it is exactly located?
It's just come in, huh?
Okay. Kumar, US or Europe, both are good choice for MIM, but it depends on many other factors as well. One of the factors is, of course, your eligibility. That is one factor. You also need to understand whether your question probably has two aspects. One is an educational aspect, another is a professional aspect. Now, when you ask, shall I go for US or Europe? If you want to know whether the US or Europe are good for academics or at least for this course, then both are good. But then as far as the profession is considered, after your course, like what you will do, if that is your concern, then there are a couple of things that you need to consider. One is always try to find a market which is where you are comfortable. There, of course, you also need to consider that language should not be a problem for you. You should be able to talk to the local, crowd to manage your work and so on. If you're also looking for a long-term career, a professional career in that particular destination, you also need to understand or do some kind of homework before you touch the destination, whether it will be easier for you to get an extended visa or something. So there are a few specific homework that you need to do. So the kind of homework that you will do will be different. For academic purpose, the homework will be different from the homework that you will do for a professional purpose. So academically, both are good, but professionally, you need to understand whether you need to ask yourself, what is your long-term career? Whether you'd like to stay in that particular destination for, many years and so on. If it is like that, then you need to do some kind of a homework. Whether the work visa is easily available, what is the typical stay back options and so on, and whether it will be easier for you to survive in the local market, which may have a different language, like the language different than English. Quality wise, both are very good. Fine, I guess if there is no more question, you can conclude the session. Ram, is it fine with you? You have any message to?
Not really, Nilanjan. There were very few questions. All have been addressed. I think we can.
Yeah, I think all have been addressed till now.
Anune?
Yeah, I think it was a very good session. Thank you everyone for joining in. For any more queries, you can write to us at info@manyagroup.com or call us at our 1800 number. The same has been given in the chat over here. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. Have a great evening. Thank you. Thanks everyone. Thanks Nilanjan. Thanks Vikram. Thanks Ram. Thank you.
Thanks, Arun.
Thanks.